The captain's voice echoed like a gavel in a courtroom, final, dangerous. But Anastasia's fingers didn't flinch. One click, one checkbox, one decision, quietly defying the script they wanted her to follow. And somewhere in the silence of the precinct, a camera kept recording. The fluorescent light above my desk hummed like a warning. It always did that, right before something went sideways. I sat there in my midnight blue uniform, the room still heavy with the adrenaline that had coated the last few hours. The smell of sweat, half-wiped coffee, and ozone from the taser discharge lingered like the ghost of a story no one wanted to tell. I replayed the body cam footage one last time before finalizing my report. The screen glowed against my tired face as I watched the moment again. The suspect, non-compliant, yes, but not aggressive. He shouted, hands raised, stumbling backward, never crossing that invisible line into physical resistance. I listened closely. No threats, no charge, just words. Loud, scared, and desperate. "That's verbal only," I whispered to myself, highlighting the line in the incident log. Across the bullpen, the captain stood stiff-backed near the coffee machine, flanked by two officers who still hadn't holstered their egos. His voice cut through the room, low and sharp. "We'll file this as aggressive resistance. You'll cover us, Officer Romanov." He didn't wait for me to answer. That was the moment I realized they weren't asking. They were building a shield, and I was supposed to be the polished badge in the center of it. I stared at the use of force drop-down. My cursor hovered over physical suspect, like it had its own doubt. Then I clicked verbal only instead. My report would match the footage. I attached the video, flagged it case number 409, and filed it to internal affairs just like protocol demanded. Clean, honest, documented. 2 minutes later, I heard the whisper behind me. "She flagged it? You serious?" I didn't turn around. Back in the locker room, my breath fogged the mirror. My reflection looked back at me with a mixture of resolve and fear. Not the kind of fear you get in an alley or on a domestic call, but the internal, slow-creeping kind. The kind that stains reputations and poisons careers from the inside. They'd call it disloyalty, maybe even insubordination, but I called it truth. The precinct fell into a strange quiet that night. No congratulations, no small talk. Just tight glances and a hallway that seemed to stretch longer than usual as I walked out. I didn't sleep, not really. And at 6:03 a.m., my phone buzzed with a restricted number. "This is Special Agent Lucas, FBI, Officer Anastasia Romanov. I need to speak with you regarding a file you submitted. Case Duar 409. I froze. My hand clenched the phone like it was a detonator. He continued, "You stay a witness, not the scapegoat. Meet me at the Federal Building, 9 a.m. The lobby of the Federal Building was colder than the outside air, though it was already deep winter. Steel, glass, silence. Everything about it felt like it had been designed to keep people small. My boots echoed across the marble floor as I followed the signs to Internal Investigations Liaison. Not exactly the place you want your badge ending up. Special Agent Lucas was younger than I expected, mid-30s, clean-shaven, eyes like blueprints, sharp, not rushed. He didn't offer a smile, only a chair. "I've reviewed the body cam footage from case Darker 409, he said, tapping a tablet with the clip frozen mid-frame. The suspect's face was contorted in fear. Officer Delgado's arm was raised, taser engaged. My own voice echoed faintly in the background. "Stand down. He's not resisting." Lucas raised his eyes to meet mine. "You understand what this implies?" I nodded. He leaned forward, lowering his voice. 3 officers filed coordinated reports. All state the suspect made a forward motion and verbally threatened assault. Your report is the only one that contradicts that narrative. I filed what happened, I said, trying to sound braver than I felt. He held up a hand. Not accusing you, I'm protecting you. What you did, filing honestly, could make you a liability to them, but a credible witness to us. My throat went dry. Am I under investigation? No, he replied, but the others might soon be. There was a pause thick enough to hear my heartbeat. Why didn't you follow the unofficial script, Officer Romanov? I gave him the truth. Because I didn't sign up to rewrite reality for convenience. Lucas studied me for a moment longer, then slid a folder across the table. You're going to get pressure, maybe even retaliation, but we've opened an inquiry. This file stays protected, subpoena ready. You don't talk to them unless I tell you. If Internal Affairs reaches out, you redirect them here. I flipped the folder open. Inside was a complaint form, unsigned, a printed copy of my report, a screenshot of the report submission timestamp, and the clip, tagged case number 409. I need you to understand, Lucas said quietly. They will not like being exposed by one of their own. Neither will the city, I thought. That afternoon, I was back at the precinct. The mood had shifted. Conversations hushed when I walked past. A few officers stared too long. One sergeant, usually friendly, pretended not to see me. Then, at 4:45 p.m., I was summoned upstairs. Captain Morales stood behind his desk, arms crossed. We've received a copy of your report, he said flatly. There seems to be confusion about what actually happened that night. No confusion, I replied. It's all in the footage. His eyes narrowed. We take care of each other in this house, Officer Romanov. I thought we took care of the truth, I answered. The silence that followed wasn't just uncomfortable, it was tactical. As I stepped out, I saw Delgado in the hallway. He didn't look angry. He looked afraid. He knew. They all knew. And I wasn't backing down. You won't believe what gets uncovered next. Keep reading. How far would you go to keep your conscience clean? Follow the story and let it ask the questions we're often too scared to answer. The truth has consequences. Stay tuned. The subpoena came wrapped in politeness, but its message was loud and clear. Back off. Delivered to my mailbox in an unmarked envelope. It requested my appearance for a follow-up clarification regarding case R409, issued not by the FBI, not by Internal Affairs, but by the precinct's own Legal Oversight Committee. That wasn't standard protocol. That was strategy. I sat on my apartment floor, the paper trembling in my hand as the morning light caught the fine print. My cat, Goya, purred beside me, oblivious to how fast the ground was shifting under my feet. Outside, sirens cut the air like threads. Inside, everything was too quiet. I had followed procedure. I had done everything right. But in this city, doing everything right didn't mean you were safe. It just meant you were visible. By noon, a thin fog of whispers had settled over the precinct. I wasn't just Anastasia from B shift anymore. I was the officer who filed the wrong kind of report. I was the one who put verbal only where someone else wanted aggressive resistance. The break room door creaked open as I stepped in. Conversations stopped mid-sentence. You hear they're reopening the Owens case, one voice said after a beat, loud enough to be heard, loud enough for me to know it was bait. Owens had filed a complaint against another officer 5 years ago. The case was buried quietly. Then the man himself was transferred. They never said why. I poured myself coffee, hands steady, eyes forward. That's good. More sunlight never hurt anyone, I said, keeping my voice calm. The silence thickened. I walked out. 2 hours later, a new BODYCAM memo landed in my inbox. Policy refresh, updated terminology, revised flagging procedures. A quiet way to scrub what had already been done. I clicked through the training, noting the wording changes. The language was shifting beneath our feet, trying to erase what my report had made visible. At 5:12 p.m., Agent Lucas called again. "They're trying to shut the door before we walk through it," he said. No greeting, no build-up. "But they're too late." "What do you mean?" I asked. "The footage has already been pulled into a federal compliance review. It's out of their hands." For a moment, I felt air return to my lungs, until he added, "But that also means your name is on the federal witness list. You'll be contacted formally, possibly surveilled, and, likely, pressured." The reality hit like ice water. I was becoming a threat, not because of what I'd done, but because I hadn't lied. That evening, as I left the precinct, Delgado caught up with me in the parking lot. He looked older than he had a week ago. "You know they're going to drag us all down," he said. "You think the FBI's here to clean house? They're here to hang someone and walk out with headlines." I met his eyes. "Then let's make sure they hang the truth, not a scapegoat." He didn't answer, just walked off, hands in his pockets. I got in my car, locked the doors, and stared at the subpoena again. I wasn't just in this story anymore. I was the story. The hearing room was built like a chapel, high ceiling, white walls, long wooden table stretching between those who spoke and those who listened. Except in this chapel, the gods wore badges and the prayers were transcribed. I sat with my palms flat against the surface, cold under my skin. Across from me, 3 members of the precinct's legal oversight committee flipped through my report like it was a novel they already knew the ending to. To my right sat an observer from internal affairs, silent, watching, recording every breath I took. One of the committee members, a woman named Alvarez, always impeccably dressed and impossible to read, looked up. "Officer Romanov, your documentation for case number 409 uses the term verbal only to describe the suspect's level of resistance. Yet 3 of your colleagues reported physical aggression. How do you explain the discrepancy?" I didn't blink. "I explain it with the BODYCAM footage, which I attached, which you all have." Alvarez nodded slowly, like she was trying to catch me in something I hadn't said yet. "And you flagged this footage yourself?" "Yes." "Without informing your commanding officer?" I hesitated, just a breath, but it was enough to draw a glance from the IA observer. "My commanding officer gave a verbal order to file the report differently. I did not follow that order." The room didn't react, just pencils scratching, pages turning, 1,000 unspoken things crawling between their silence. Alvarez folded her hands. "And you believe your decision was objective?" I leaned forward. "I believe my decision was accurate." The door creaked open behind us. Everyone turned. A man in a dark gray suit entered, credentials clipped to his breast pocket. FBI. He didn't speak, just handed a sealed envelope to the IA observer, nodded once to the committee, and left. The temperature in the room changed instantly. Alvarez cleared her throat. "We'll adjourn for now. No explanation, no conclusion, just a dismissal, like a hand sweeping dust off a table." Outside, the sky had turned heavy with rain. I stood under the awning of the building, watching it pour, my breath visible in the cold. I pulled my coat tighter, checked my phone. One message, from Lucas. "They're circling the wagons. Be careful what you sign." Back at my apartment, I paced. Each footstep echoed the same question in my mind. How long before they stop asking and start forcing? I was no longer being ignored. I was being surrounded. By the next morning, someone had slipped a paper into my locker, unsigned, unaddressed, but unmistakable. "You don't have to bleed for this. Walk away." Typed, centered, neat. But at the bottom corner, someone had handwritten, "We know who you're talking to." The precinct issued a new rotation schedule the following week. Just like that, I was pulled from my regular shift and reassigned to desk duty, reviewing outdated traffic citations and summarizing patrol logs from a district I hadn't worked in since the academy. No explanation, no warning, just a printout tacked to the bulletin board at 7 a.m. It wasn't punishment on paper. It was quieter than that, designed to look neutral, designed to isolate. I walked into the new office. No window, no radio, just two other officers pretending they'd forgotten how to make eye contact. A monitor blinked with a backlog of low-priority cases: vehicle impounds, noise complaints, missing cones. By 10 a.m., I received an internal message marked priority. No subject line, just a link to a shared drive with dozens of files, most of them labeled with incident numbers I didn't recognize. One stood out. Complaint pending redundant. Tagged. Case. 409. I clicked. The document was a rewritten version of my original report. Different language, different tone. It still carried my name. It stated that the suspect had stepped aggressively toward Officer Delgado and ignored repeated commands with escalating hostility. It was fake. I backed out immediately and took a screenshot. Then I saved a local copy. Then I called Lucas. He picked up on the first ring. "They're fabricating amended reports under your credentials," I said. "I know," he replied. "We've been monitoring access logs. That's why I called. You're going to receive a formal request from Internal Affairs. Don't respond. Let them make the first move." An hour later, I was called into HR. Zoom call. 2 reps, neutral backgrounds, smiles that didn't reach their eyes. "We've had some concerns about your workplace adaptability, Officer Romanov," one of them said. "Some of your recent actions suggest a shift in team cohesion. We're offering an optional debriefing, off the record, of course." Translation: "We're not threatening you. We're just here to make you uncomfortable until you leave on your own." I declined. That night, my apartment buzzed with silence. I sat in the dark, watching the clip from Case VR 409 play again, over and over. I knew every frame, every second. I watched myself trying to de-escalate. I watched the moment the captain turned away. I watched the truth. And still, in my inbox, no updates, no protection, no clarification from the department. Just silence. Until 3:42 a.m. Ping. A single message from an anonymous email. "You think you're the first? He buried 2 before you. Stay smart, officer." I didn't sleep. At 6 a.m., I walked into the precinct and knew something was wrong. The lights were on, but too many desks were empty. The usual morning static, coffee machines humming, chairs scraping, laughter down the hallway, was absent. Instead, I found Captain Morales in the conference room, standing over a pile of papers, his jaw clenched like stone. He didn't look up as I passed. 10 minutes later, I was summoned to Internal Affairs, the real one this time, not a performance in a Zoom box. Agent Marcus, middle-aged, always with a peppermint in his cheek, waited with a folder labeled Subpoena, Case POF 409, Romanov, A. "I assume you're aware your original BODYCAM file was deleted from the precinct's archive last night," he said. My mouth went dry. "No," I answered. "I wasn't told." "You weren't supposed to be." He tapped the folder. "Luckily, we had our own copy. Time-stamped. Yours matches. The altered version was added later. We confirmed it." He opened the folder and slid over 2 printouts, side by side, my report and the falsified one. "They're sloppy," he said, "but not stupid. They were counting on silence, on fear." "Are charges coming?" I asked. Marcus exhaled. "That depends. Right now, we're watching. Your footage was the only thing that gave us grounds to dig deeper. and you're now a primary witness in a growing federal investigation into evidence tampering, obstruction, and conspiracy. Outside, the sky was colorless. Snow flurried sideways like static across a dead TV channel. I stood by the glass, heart pounding, trying to breathe through the weight of knowing too much. Back at the precinct, my locker was empty. Not cleared out, just cleaned. The Post-its, the pen I kept wedged behind the hinge, even my backup notepad, gone. In their place, a printed copy of a meme. A wolf wearing a sheep's badge, captioned, "Whistle bark." The message was clear. They'd started branding me, not just as a liability, but as a threat. Still, when I turned around, a rookie named Naya from Night Shift stood nearby. She didn't speak. She just gave me a small nod. It wasn't much, but it was enough. By the time I got home, 2 things were waiting for me. An encrypted USB drive with a return address from Washington, D.C., a handwritten envelope shoved under my door. Inside the envelope, a list, 4 names, all officers, all previously disciplined or silenced for reporting misconduct. At the bottom, scribbled in ink, they were brave too. Don't let them be forgotten. I sat in my kitchen, staring at the list. The names felt like echoes, ghosts of people who once wore the same uniform, walked the same halls, believed the same oath. Somewhere along the way, each one had been erased, quietly, strategically. I typed their names into the precinct system. All 4 files were restricted. One even flagged an access violation warning. You don't lock personnel files unless you're hiding something. The USB drive was next. I plugged it in using an old laptop with no Wi-Fi, just in case. A folder opened. Inside, a series of time-stamped screen recordings, surveillance footage, emails, internal chat logs, all pointing to one thing: case number 409 wasn't an isolated incident. There were patterns, edited reports, deleted body cam clips, consistent terminology used to flag suspects as aggressive, even when they weren't. An algorithmic trail. Too clean to be a coincidence. This wasn't just corruption, it was a workflow. I forwarded the files to Lucas through the secure channel he'd given me. 10 minutes later, he called. "You just handed us something massive," he said. "What happens now?" I asked. "We isolate the pipeline. We identify who built it, who approved it, who let it run this long. Then we build a case that doesn't just catch one officer, but an entire system." I sat back in my chair, winded by the scope of what I'd touched. I had thought I was protecting the truth. I didn't realize I was cracking open a dam. That night, someone rang my buzzer. No name, no answer when I spoke into the intercom. I didn't go to the door. I just watched the shadow retreat from the hallway camera. I had become too visible to disappear quietly. The next morning, I arrived at the station and found the captain's office locked. Sealed, actually. Evidence tape stretched across the door. Delgado was nowhere in sight. A text from Lucas came minutes later. "FBI issued a warrant. Seizures underway. Stay on alert." The whispers were different now. Not hostile, nervous. No one looked at me directly, like they were afraid proximity might make them targets too. By lunch, an email hit everyone's inbox. Subject: Federal Review Compliance Meeting. Mandatory attendance date: Monday, 9 a.m. We were no longer pretending nothing was happening. Later that day, a new message appeared in my inbox. Anonymous again. "You want the final piece? Meet me where this all started. Midnight. Alley off Jefferson and 8th. Come alone." It was reckless, stupid, dangerous. And I was going. The alley behind Jefferson and 8th was the kind of place that absorbed sound. Narrow, choked with shadows. The air thick with damp brick and burnt oil. Midnight didn't feel like midnight there. It felt like time had been paused and no one remembered to press play again. I waited. Unarmed by choice. No wire, no backup. Just instinct, a flashlight, and a growing knot at the base of my spine. A figure stepped out from behind a dumpster. Hoodie up, face shadowed. I didn't reach for anything, just breathed. "You came," they said, voice low, shaky, young, female. "You're the one who left the names," she nodded. "They were my friends." She pulled a flash drive from her coat and held it out like it was radioactive. "This has everything. Internal memos, complaint redactions, altered timestamps, even the calibration data for the BODYCAM system they've been manipulating." I took it gently. "How did you get all this?" "I was IT, contract, invisible. They forgot I had clearance." "You know this could bury them." She looked up at me. "It could bury me too." And just like that, she slipped back into the dark. By 2 a.m., I was back at my apartment, files decrypted and spreading across my screen like a virus of truth. I saw evidence chains broken by hand, officer reviews rewritten hours after submission, complaints labeled as resolved with no follow-up interviews, even a few messages between supervisors joking about training someone into silence. It was an empire built on editing. At 4:07 a.m., I sent it all to Lucas. He didn't reply. He didn't have to. By 9 a.m., the precinct was crawling with agents, subpoenas, seizures, screens yanked from desks, officers asked to turn in their sidearms. It wasn't a raid. It was surgery. Delgado was escorted out in cuffs. Morales wasn't there at all. His office had been emptied before sunrise. No one dared speak to me. Not out loud. But as I passed the evidence room, I saw Nia again. She didn't say a word, just gave me a look that said, "You didn't blink. The fallout didn't come fast. It came hard and wide and loud." Headlines ran the next morning. "Whistleblower body cam footage unravels citywide police data scandal." My name wasn't in the article, but it was on every desk in the building. I was called to testify 3 days later. This time, not as an officer, as a witness. The courtroom smelled like cold coffee and old paper, sterile, indifferent. I sat behind the witness table in full uniform, my badge heavy against my chest, though for once, it didn't feel like a shield. It felt like a symbol, one they couldn't take back. The prosecution played the body cam footage first. Case Duras 409, uncut. The room watched in silence as the screen flickered with the truth I had refused to erase. My voice, my restraint, the captain's order. File it as aggressive resistance. And then, my report, displayed side by side with the fabricated version. The prosecutor's voice rang out clear. "Officer Romanov, can you confirm for the court which of these reports you personally filed?" I pointed without hesitation. "That one." "And the other?" "I didn't write it. I didn't approve it. It was created without my knowledge and submitted under my name." Gasps rippled through the back of the room, but in the front rows, silence, press, law students, activists, victims' families, all listening like their futures were being read aloud. Across the aisle, the defense fumbled. They tried to paint me as idealistic, young, eager to impress federal authorities. But the jury wasn't buying it, not after the footage, not after the timeline, not after the digital fingerprints tied to the falsified file. When it was over, the judge didn't smile. He just nodded. "Officer Romanov, your testimony is noted as critical to this proceeding." I left through the side door, heart still beating like I was on patrol. Outside, the air was different, not freer, just cleaner. Over the next few weeks, resignations followed. Quietly at first, then in waves, 4 suspensions, 2 federal indictments, a formal audit of the department's report system. But I didn't celebrate. I went back to my desk. Different precinct, new faces, new silence, no awards, no banners, just a fresh body cam clipped high on my chest. I reviewed a file labeled Case R533, same neighborhood, same profile, same fragile tension. Only this time, when the footage uploaded, I saw a line in the report. Reviewed by Romanov, A, verbal only. It stayed, no edits, no erasure, just the truth. Spring came late that year. The city, usually rushing past blooming trees without notice, moved a little slower, like even the streets needed time to breathe. I walked past the courthouse steps where just months ago my silence would have been safer. Now, it was my voice that had opened the door. But truth doesn't fix everything. It just stops the bleeding. There were meetings, panels, oversight protocols rewritten in boardrooms. A new zero-tolerance directive made the news, and for a while, the headlines called me a hero. Then they moved on, as they always do. Inside the new precinct, I didn't talk much, but I didn't hide either. Rookie officers came to me quietly, not for gossip, for guidance. Some whispered stories of body cam glitches, pressure to reword reports, strange edits to their statements. I listened, handed them the new contact for internal affairs, and reminded them, timestamp everything. Lucas called once in early June. They're pushing for a statewide integrity initiative, he said. The footage from case number 409 will be part of the federal training curriculum. I didn't ask for that. I didn't want my face in a classroom. But maybe that's how you change a system, not with noise, but with documentation. I went home that night and watched the sunset from my fire escape. Goya curled up next to me, purring like a metronome for something steady. In the distance, a siren wailed, then faded. My phone buzzed. Unknown number. You didn't flinch? I was one of them. Thank you. No name, no reply needed. I saved the message anyway. At 11:43 p.m., I powered down my phone. No news alerts, no calls, no reports to file. Just the quiet. For the first time in months, I closed my eyes without rehearsing what I'd say in court, or reviewing the clip frame by frame, or bracing for fallout. This wasn't peace, but it was the beginning of something honest, and I could live with that.